Good afternoon. Afternoon, everybody. I'm Patrick Lewis, Director of Collections and Research at the Filson Historical Society. Thank you for joining us for today's program. Established in 2012, Work Architecture and Design is a Louisville-based firm offering architectural and interior design services on a variety of project types and scopes ranging from hospitality, housing, preservation, and adaptive reuse. At the heart of the business, Work's people are driven by passion to enhance the art and craft of architecture with a focus on elevating clients, neighborhoods, and cities. Adriane Riesser, AIA, and Kathryn Curtis, Associate AIA, are both Louisville natives and thrilled to have been involved with the Gaffney House restoration. Please join me in welcoming them.
Hello, everyone. I'm Adriane Riesser, and this is Kathryn Curtis, and we're with Work Architecture and Design. And we're absolutely overwhelmed by the amount of interest and you guys coming to see us. But we are the architectural team who worked on the renovation of the Gaffney House. And we're so excited to share some of the behind-the-scene photos and information about the house's renovation today. And our goal for this presentation is to not bore you and to keep the intrigue of the Gaffney House. The short story is that James Gaffney was a Louisville-based architect and worked from the late 1800s to the early 1900s. And he built this home on River Road as his personal residence in the 1920s. And then it passed down through several families until 1979, which is the last time that a family lived in the house full time. And I think we have some people that lived in the house in the front row here. And so it sat abandoned for about 40 years. And then in the year 2020, the current owner, Dr. Galen Weiss, purchased the home, and then the house has been under construction from 2021 to 2023. And just a little bit about our firm, we do a lot of adaptive reuse and renovation projects. We like the before picture to be as dirty and run down and as possible. And so we were really excited to get this project and to work on it. And then today we'll be talking about the history and lore of the Gaffney House, how it's situated on River Road, the building when it was constructed in the 1920s, and then all of the details and the renovations that we had worked on the last couple of years. So I'm sure that everyone in this room has heard or said some of these things about the Gaffney House, but by far the most common thing is that I've driven by that house every day for 30 years, and I always wondered what it was because it doesn't really look like a home from the outside. It looks like a castle or maybe a commercial building. I think on Reddit, there's talk of it being haunted or that someone should buy it and turn it into a brewery. And then I've heard all sorts of people mention that they've gone to parties at the Gaffney House or that they had been there in the 1970s, all sorts of things. So it's pretty fun. And then in real life, the house was built by James Gaffney. His career, he did a lot of private residences, larger apartment buildings, churches, commercial buildings, some really neat parking lots. And he was never formally trained as an architect, but he did apprentice under a few other architects in the area. And then he himself he joined the American Institute of Architects in 1921, and he became a registered architect in 1935. The Gaffney House website has a ton of excellent information that goes beyond what Kathryn and I will be able to share today, including many, many photographs of the house, and then also a thesis that Lisa Grace Carpenter did on James Gaffney and all of his projects. And that's available to download as a PDF on the website as well. So it's a great resource. There's a timeline on there that's easy to read and lots of photos, and it's very cool. Unfortunately, not a whole lot is actually known about James Gaffney's life. He was born in 1863 to Irish Catholic immigrants, and his Catholic faith remained important to him throughout his life. As I mentioned, He did not have any formal architecture training, but he did attend St. Xavier College for Boys for 1 year and then began his architecture career as a draftsman. He was at some point in his life married and had 2 children, but it is believed that they had passed away by about 1910, which is the year that he bought the property that he built this house on. And then this timeline just shows a couple of major buildings that you might recognize here in Louisville, including St. James Catholic Church and Holy Name Catholic Church. But he has over a dozen projects that are on the National Register of Historic Places, including the one shown on the screen, as well as several houses in the Highlands Historic District. And then here's a photo of the architect, James Gaffney. And then on the right-hand side is an advertisement from the Brazil Clay Company from about 1912. They were a brick manufacturer in Brazil, Indiana, which is near Terre Haute. And it's up there with all the towns that are called Peru, Milan, Warsaw, Geneva, in that part of Indiana. But this advertisement featured several of James Gaffney's projects that had been completed in Louisville at that time. And then this is just part of the application for the Gaffney House to be on the National Register of Historic Places, and it did gain that designation in 1983.
Next, we're going to dive in a little bit more to the site itself. But first, you can see on the screen a 1940 Sanborn fire insurance map of Louisville, and the red star is where the Gaffney House is located. So this was even in 1940, which really shows that the time that the home was built, it was really quite far out into the country. Whereas today, I think we view it as somewhat close to downtown. Gaffney described the site in a memorandum about the home that he left in the late 1930s, and he stated, "Progressive strides in automobile and road building have given us quick and appreciative glimpses of the country landscape. Also, intimate panoramic views of floating crafts and aquatic sports of many kinds on our beautiful Ohio River, particularly around Jefferson County." So he really understood kind of the views that this site afforded. In that memorandum about the home, he wrote that the site was annexed in 1910 from a farm and estate across River Road. And by 1927, it was listed as his permanent residence. The home itself is a 3-story building, though only 1 story can be seen from River Road. The upper 2 levels are habitable, while the lowest level provided space for the building systems. River Road, as we know it today, had kind of turned into that form around the same time the home was built, if not shortly thereafter, straightened, paved, and rebuilt. In this image, you can see the concrete retaining wall along the river, along with brick railing and planters on top, and an archway that contains stairs which lead from the house to the riverbank. He also wrote in that same memorandum that the home had never been underwater except for the January 1937 flood, which I'm sure we are all familiar with. By 2020, when we became acquainted with the home, there were several modern-day ordinances and requirements at play. The fact that, as Adriane mentioned, the home was on the National Register of Historic Places, the owner's pursuit of historic tax credits. The site was situated in the Jefferson floodplain and conveyance zones, as well as the 100-year floodplain, as well as specific MSD and septic requirements that we had to work with. Here, we just like to include this photo that was taken from 6 Mile Island, whose edge is right kind of parallel with the home site. So the home's connection to the river was obviously important, and here are some few photos taken from when we first encountered it. To the left, you'll see remnants of prismatic panels, which are often used in concrete sidewalks to provide daylight to the basements below. These were found at the edge of the river, and it is speculated that these were used by Gaffney to create a dock into the river. And then you also see a close-up of the stairs that led to the river. So in the sub-basement, which is what we call the lowest level of the home, buried deepest into the site, there were 3 basins for collecting water, presumably for a water filtration system. We believe that they collected river water and rainwater. They then connected to a sand filter, and that they helped run a steam boiler, which we found below. And this sort of would have been a form of a passive filtration system, which is pretty futuristic for that time. And then in the photo to the right, you'll see that there were 3 further basins, which were built, we presume, for a future home. So the decision was made to enclose those basins that were provided for a future home, as the owner's vision was for the lawn to kind of become an event space and allow for further enjoyment of the home, providing plenty of space for all sorts of events and ways to relax and view the scenery, as well as new vehicle and boat access to the river. So you can see here some of our renderings and drawings of that plan.
And as we talk more about the inside of the house, and then a common theme throughout all of James Gaffney's projects is texture and pattern. And then from this view of the house, you're able to see just how much different texture there is just in this one view. You can see that the upper level has a more uniform brick pattern, but then the level below it has a more striped brick pattern. And then on this building, the cornice that wraps all the way around the building has glazed brick, terracotta, and tiles that are used to make a really textured pattern that feels very 3-dimensional, even though it's flat. You may also see in descriptions of the project that it was built in the Mannerist style, and that basically means that it takes a traditional style and tweaks it a little bit. And so you can see the trim around the window, and then the stone coin detailing towards the riverside, about how they take a classical element and make it asymmetrical and jaunty, and just adds to the texture of the project. Also at the very beginning of this project, this entire facade was covered in really thick ivy. And then during construction, the brick was tuck pointed and repaired to pretty much its original condition. This is a document that James Gaffney created, describing the structural systems and the construction of the house. It states that the foundation walls were made of concrete. There were steel columns and beams, and then the walls on the upper floors were constructed of clay building tile with a brick exterior. Something that was neat about the brick exterior is that it was vitrified brick, which means that it's heated to a very high temperature and has almost a glazed-like quality. And so that's great for water resistance, especially with this project being located at the Ohio River. The floors were constructed of hollow clay building tile. And then the topping of the floors was reinforced concrete. And you'll see in some of the pictures in just a minute that there were scored patterns into the floors. There's a star and sun motif. And that was always in the project since the time it was constructed. And then just the fact that it was concrete reinforced with steel in a house that was built in the 1920s would have been pretty uncommon at the time. That building technology was fairly new and would have been most common in commercial buildings. And then we just wanted to touch on the term adaptive reuse and the words renovation and preservation. We might refer to some renovation and some presentation for the rest of our slides. And preservation means that you take something and you try to match the original as best you can and make it exactly like it was 100 years ago. That's not exactly what happened in this project. The goals of the project were to add 2 more bedrooms to the building and to update the mechanical system. So it had heat and air condition, and it had modern kitchens, and it had modern bathrooms. So all of those fall into the category of renovation rather than preservation. And then just to give you an idea of the layout of the house, in general, the upper level was in good condition, and all of the details on the floors and the walls and the vaulted ceilings were in fairly good shape. So can you point out where the river is on this plan? The river's on that side, and then you would enter from River Road into a foyer, and then there's a living room and a dining room and a kitchen. And then this floor has 2 bedrooms with a sitting room off of each bedroom. One is riverside and one is roadside. And then each of the bedrooms has its own bathroom. And then the lower level was, there weren't as many as the original details on this floor, with the exception of the feature fireplace that in the living room. And so on this floor, there's a living room and a kitchen, and then 2 bedrooms, one there, and then the garage, you actually gain access to the house from the lower level. And then on each floor, there's this long concrete balcony at the exterior that gives you those sweeping views of the Ohio River. And then there is a sub-basement as well, which just houses that water filtration system that we spoke about earlier. And there was a fireplace that would have been used to heat the house originally. And then it also has a patio with access to the river. And then we'd like to share some photos of the existing conditions when we started the project. This is a view from the river, and you can see how overgrown with ivy and vegetation the entire building was, how the roof was caving in, and how there was graffiti and vandalism affecting the house. Here's a photo of one of those upper balconies. And you can see how deteriorated some of the roof is. But overall, the entire structure, because it was that reinforced concrete and brick, the main building structure was really sound and in good condition. And as part of the process, we did have a structural engineer come out and give the building a good clean bill of health and everything. This is a door to the sub-basement. You can see again the ivy, the issue of vandalism, and how the gate had to be chain shut over the door. This is what the kitchen on the upper level looked like before. You can see in the photo on the right that part of the roof is literally missing. And then just the plaster had been damaged over time. And there's a lot of debris in the house. This is in the dining room on the upper level. And originally there were 4 glazed tiles that depicted scenes of the Ohio River in each season. So beautiful springtime, sailing in summer, leaves changing in fall, and then a winter scene. And unfortunately, you can see that the summertime tile was either destroyed or stolen. And then there's graffiti in here as well, just to add to the fun of this renovation. And this is an idea of what the bathrooms had looked like when we began the project. The orange spots on the right-hand side are things that are marked for demolition. But just to give you an idea of what the condition of the bathrooms and the other services in the house would have been like in 2020. And then there's lots of graffiti, art, whatever you want to call it, all over the house. This is a view of the balcony that's off of the lower level. And there are a couple of things that are interesting to point out in this photo. that the glass enclosure was not original. It had been added at a later date. And then there's also a line in the ceiling. You can see that there's actually an addition to the balconies to make it even deeper. You can see that there's a change from the concrete beam to the steel. And then it made the balconies on the upper level and the lower level even larger. And it's unknown when that addition would have been made. And I would just like to point out, I've been to the Gaffney House probably at this point 50 times, and every time I go there, there's always something new to notice in the details. There's, you know, the concrete at the dock that Kathryn pointed out earlier. There's original doors, original tile. The photo in the lower left-hand corner is just the top of a brick railing. And Gaffney even alternated the colors of brick just to continue that textural interest in something as small as a railing. And then these are, we have some original door hardware from the garages as well.
So next, we're gonna dive into the details and the renovation and sort of interior design phase of the project. And this is just a cool photo close-up of the columns that separated the main living room on the upper level from the dining room. And again, as a reminder, as Adriane stated, this project was an adaptive reuse project that was a combination of renovation and preservation. So there were elements of both in the project, but it was not all one or the other. A great example of some of the preservation were these cast plaster moldings that were found in the upper level bedrooms that contained original or were made out of original horsehair plaster. We worked together with our builder to have molds made to repair and restore the damaged and missing pieces with the proper horsehair plaster. The Riverside picture or Riverside bedroom shown here depicted a hunting scene, which you can kind of see in the middle photo close up. And the roadside bedroom contained a more floral and fleur-de-lis motif. So you can see the process of that. This is that roadside bedroom with the floral and fleur-de-lis motifs, and then a photo of that restoration in process. So some things that we had to keep in mind when working on these types of projects, especially this one in particular, is the decay that occurs throughout the life of the home, and particularly in the murals and the painted floors. So these are examples on the screen of one of the murals in the upper living room and the painted floors in the bedrooms from the time that we first encountered the home in December of 2020 to midway through construction in November of 2022, and then post restoration and renovation in July of 2023. The home was, of course, not conditioned all the way until late in construction, and so these elements become subject to moisture and weather, especially with its proximity to the river, as well as just the vibration and activity from construction, which are all natural parts of the process, but that's why careful documentation is so important so we can restore them properly. These are some photos again from the beginning of our first encounters of the painted floors. The left photo in the Riverside bedroom and the right photo of the great room, which helped us determine the paint colors to use for the floors. And this was our floor painting process, which was a little ad hoc, but just sort of the way that things went with this type of home. And again, we tried to select colors that were not necessarily, we couldn't replicate exactly what was there, but historical colors and things that complemented kind of its prior state. The lower level, as we mentioned previously, was in far worse shape. The scored concrete floors did not have any residual paint left on them. So the colors we chose may not be historically accurate, but we tried to make them complementary to the adjacent building elements, much of which were mosaic and terracotta tile. So another thing to note is that, especially in the lower level where floor cutting had to happen or pieces of the floor were missing, we chose to use terracotta tile as the most element that went the best with everything as far as kind of infilling missing pieces where we weren't able to replicate exactly what was there. Here you can see the lack of color on the lower level floors in the process, as well as an example of complementary wallpaper that we selected for the adjacent powder room that had some of those sun motifs that Adriane mentioned earlier. On the lower level fireplace, we installed rookwood tiles, some solid color glazed ones, as well as hand painted ones of 3 different birds, one of which was a cardinal, as just kind of a nod to Kentucky's state bird. Again, these weren't historically accurate, but we felt that in this case were an example of a design decision that reflected the spirit of the home rather than exact restoration. So moving on to some more of the floors, the upper level bedroom sunrooms had pattern tile kind of reminiscent of a rug. So we created kind of a nod to this tile with the use of pattern tile in the lower level bathrooms. Again, not a replica of what was there, but an example of kind of a renovation technique that respects the sort of design language of the home and the spirit of Gaffney's design choices. You can see a similar floor tile technique in the other full bathroom on the lower level, as well as Rookwood Tiles, which I should mention is a historic tile company out of, I believe, Cincinnati, whose tiles were present in a lot of homes in the or buildings in the region. And then to the right is an example of the finish schedule for the project with imagery of the new tile selections. Again, I should reiterate, as Adriane mentioned, there were so many design elements of this project, but as well as new ones, and probably the most amount of various colored tiles and elements in any project we've ever done. So while there were also many elements of preservation, the home was also upgraded to contain modern conveniences such as full kitchens on the upper and lower levels, lighting, heating, and air conditioning. So some of these photos show the results of those efforts. And with the furnishings, we've just simply tried to have a lot of fun with them as well, not adhering to any particular time period or style. We selected, procured, and installed the furnishings as well as much of the decor, and some of the more unique items we had fun finding locally, like at Floor to Flea with the owner, and just things that were really unique. Again, not replicating what was there, but went along with this playful spirit of the home. And lighting was selected in the same vein, and particularly in the upper level great room. It had the most, I'd say, design elements going on in it. So we've selected a light fixture that matched the scale of the room without taking away from those design elements. And then we had fun with other fixtures throughout. So in closing, now we're going to kind of run through some before and after photos and things like that. And I hope that this has helped kind of inform a little bit of the background of how we got there. And this is that painted floor I showed earlier that had no color on it prior, adjacent to one of the bedrooms and bathrooms on the lower level. So James Gaffney created these sort of analog renderings or vignettes. We presume he created them in his retirement, where he modified photos of the home with elements that just kind of added to the scenery. So this one of the exterior had a sailboat and figures playing in the front, compared to the photo we have taken most recently this year. Again, as we mentioned, the basement was in extremely bad shape, and unfortunately, the majority of the features seen in this image were not left in the space, and due to just the restraints of the process, we weren't able to recreate all of them, but it's still really interesting to look at just how much was going on in this house. This is the great room and dining room. We think that maybe the yellow color that he added was meant to represent the sun coming through the large windows. This is the fireplace, which you can see had these paintings, which were of George Washington and Abraham Lincoln. Those were likely, unfortunately, stolen or broken. Nothing remained of them when we went to the house, and one day we'd love to commission new ones, maybe of Gaffney or something else. This is the great room looking the opposite direction. I would say this is maybe the creepiest of the photos that he had produced for the home. And again, when we encountered the home, much of those arches were kind of in disrepair. He had these mystery busts in the arches, and then he had added those figures on the balcony, which is definitely interesting. Again, the dining room really was in pretty preserved shape, which was great, but you can see the one summertime tile that was missing, as well as some of the ceiling detail. And yeah, and those images in the center, or the trays up in the ceiling, were sort of like translucent panels with skylights, but again, that part wasn't really there when we got there. This is the roadside bedroom, and as Adriane mentioned, James Gaffney was kind of a devout Catholic, and he really used a lot of sort of Catholic and religious motifs throughout the home. Again, most of these items were gone by the time we got there, but you can see some of that in these archways here. And the riverside bedroom with similar motifs, as well as the stained glass in the arch. And finally, the upper level patio used to have some awnings that that shaded the area, and you can also see how the patio used to be straight. And then we did include a couple photos from after Gaffney's time. It's just kind of neat to see color photos of how it was lived in some of those other elements. And the bedrooms and great room, and a great sunset photo of the outside.
So those before and afters that we just showed you kind of compared James Gaffney's original vision of his house to what it looks like today. And then we also have a fun little series of photos that are what the house looked like when we started working on it in 2020 versus what it looks like now. So this is that kitchen that where the roof was falling in. And then it's all cleaned up now. And then in the photo on the right, you can see the original tile on the floor. This is that fireplace in the upstairs living room. It had the graffiti. This isn't actually stonework on the walls. It's a plaster that's painted to look like stone. And so that's been all cleaned up. We actually, the owner brought in a painter to do some restoration paintwork in here to really match closely what was repaired to what was there originally. Again, these are what the bathrooms looked like when we began the renovation, and then we kept the major elements of what was in those rooms. So the archways around the shower, the original floors, and just made them modern and clean and usable. This is the view in that dining room into the kitchen. And then this is the upper level deck facing downtown Louisville. You can see that a rail's been added, the floors have been cleaned and painted, the windows replaced throughout the house. And then for these exterior doors, those are mahogany doors, which is a hardwood that is water resistant. So this upper deck should be good to be enjoyed for years to come. And then this is a view from the river before. And then this is a photo that I took recently from the Belle of Louisville. And so you can really see the transformation, especially with the gray winter day to the sunny summer day, just exactly how much the project has changed over the last couple of years. And then we're also just happy to see how well the home has been received. It's gotten several publications in the Courier Journal, and then these are some examples of photos shared on social media. And it's just amazing that so many people are able to stay at the Gaffney House now or visit, enjoy the grounds, and then create new memories there. So James Gaffney's legacy, he didn't have any children or direct heirs when he passed away, but he has a huge legacy in the city of Louisville with all of his houses, churches, apartment buildings, and commercial buildings. And I think that he would really take pride in how well these structures were built and how in good condition many of them still are. And then, of course, his picturesque and eccentric use of color and texture that makes these buildings his signature. And then we would just like to thank many people, but the owner of the house, Dr. Galen Weiss, Wilkinson Builders, who were the contractor on the project. Luxury Rentals Louisville put together the website. And then this thesis that I mentioned earlier has been a real joy to read and get more information on. And then Sharon and Bill. And then there were so many people. These are all the tradespeople who worked on the project, from landscapers, all the masonry work and everything. It was just a very large team of people. So that's it.
Thank you all. We welcome questions. We've got, hands up, and I'll bring the lights around.
I get this, but what became of the four beautiful tile that depicted the Four Seasons?
Yeah, three of them, they're still there. Yeah. Yeah, you can see in the right-hand photo that you will see them tomorrow. And then the owner actually hired an artist to recreate the tile that was missing. And so that there are four scenes there, like had been originally planned.
Yeah, in the photo, there's, we had covered it with wood that matched the trim, just for the time being, but yeah, as Adriane mentioned, it's been replaced.
Are there a list of other Gaffney houses that he designed in Louisville?
Yes, so a lot of that is listed on the Gaffney House's website, but a few of them, let me go back to that slide. He did the Belvoir Apartments, which he had lived there later in his life. He did St. James Catholic Church, the addition to, in addition to St. Mary and Elizabeth Hospital. I do like to point out that a lot of people say that he was one of the main architects of the Waverly Hills Sanatorium, sorry, not a tuberculosis expert. But he, from our research, what we were able to find is that he had designed a two-story addition to the home, to the hospital, but not the whole thing. Yeah, not the building that you probably think of today. And that addition actually was destroyed, I think in the 90s. He also did a boathouse at the, actually, I'm not going to say that because I can't remember the name of it. The Marmaduke building, a lot of interesting parking garages throughout town. Again, a lot of that is listed on the Gaffney House website, and Lisa Grace Carpenter's thesis lists pretty much everything. Homes in Old Louisville as well. A house in the Highlands, yeah. A few of them, I think, yeah. And he lived in a lot of those homes as well.
How did you change the house's connection to the river? Did you still get to the river, or did you build up the shore so you came to the water? How does that work now?
Yeah, so along with the contractor and our site contractors, they cleaned it up as much as they could. And in those site photos, regraded a lot of it. The owner had a wood dock built as well. And you can still use those stairs that were there to get down to the river. So it's still there. And then the driveway was added as well, that goes down.
Like on HTTP, the total cost of renovation.
That's a great question. It was a lot. I would say.
Yeah, I have a question, and maybe a comment. I'm of the panel window with the stained glass.
Mhm.
I didn't know, I see now it's all clear, but I don't know what happened to the stained glass.
Yeah. Do you want to answer? Yeah, I think they were stolen. Yeah. I mean, like Adriane said, and they had said so much of the kind of decorative elements that were easily reachable were completely gone by the time any of us or the owner had gotten to the house, unfortunately.
I got here a little bit late, and if this was mentioned already. Just for me, his first religious mission is about 6 blocks south of here. It's the old St. Philip Newry Church.
Yep. Yep.
Do you all mention that or not?
I don't know if we mentioned that one. There's so many that we kind of.
Yeah, well, I will give that a plug because it's an active, cultural.
It's good to know. Yeah, that's great. Thank you. He's running around with the microphone. I think he'll get to y'all.
Sorry, thank you, Council. We're doing a masonry restoration. How did you match this pieces? Because most of that is not going to be made.
Right.
What did you do to match this in sections of masonry?
Yeah, that's a great question, and something that we didn't mention in our presentation, but that we speculate is true, is that he had reused different bricks and tiles from his previous projects on this house. So there may have been that may have been the source of some of the bricks that he used on this project. But we were pretty fortunate that the main brick on the lower level and the upper level were in pretty good condition. So we didn't need to do a lot of color matching there. But there were some missing pieces in that cornice that has all those different patterns and everything. And so in that case, if there was a glazed brick or a tile that was missing, we had patched it with a standard color brick. And so if you look at the pattern of that, it's not exactly perfect, but we tried to not match anything that was really special that we wouldn't be able to get the same thing.
So do you still have two entrances? I mean, is it really two separate units potentially?
Yes, so it's set up where because it's an Airbnb and then event space now. And so it's set up where you can rent the entire building, or you can rent just the top floor or just the lower floor. And there are two separate entrances. There's that main one off of River Road. And then there's a small staircase down to the entrance to the lower level. And those would have been the original entrances to the house as well. Yeah, that's a great question. There is parking in front of the garage, and then as part of the site renovation, a driveway was added, and so there's some additional parking. Yeah, perfect. Yeah, and there's some additional parking down at the bottom of the driveway.
That adds like quite a bit. And yeah, there is a 2-car garage that is empty as well.
What's the house actually built on? Is it like a limestone formation?
It's a concrete foundation structure. Oh, underneath it? Oh, I'm not sure. I don't think that there was a lot because we did a significant amount of excavation for all of this site work that's shown in this slide. And they didn't hit limestone. It was all pretty soft soil.
Apologize if you've already said this, we came in a little late, but did Mr. Gaffney build this house for himself in
Yes.
1927 and he lived in it?
Yes.
Correct?
He lived in it until about, it was before his death, but after his retirement. So he, the house was finished being built in 1927, and then I believe he lived there until about 1940. And then he did sell the house before he died in the 1940s.
And he,
And then also, I have another question. How did the 37 flood?
yeah, so, and to add to Adriane, we think or speculated that he had used the home as a, summer weekend home in the beginning and then it became his full-time residence when he sort of was towards retirement. But to answer your question as well, he had mentioned in that memorandum, this document that, it's really blurred out, but it's kind of in this corner that, the home the only time it had been flooded was the 37 flood. So I'm not really sure what level, isn't River Road at the 100-year?
Yeah, so.
Yeah.
Today, the basement, the sub-basement of this building would fall in the floodplain, but the upper two floors are above the floodplain and
As we know, haven't.
safe to occupy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Were there any aspects of renovation that were the most rewarding?
Yeah. I mean, it was definitely a unique process because I think the owner was really open and receptive to our ideas or preferences or kind of our reference of knowledge. And the contractors were really good to work with kind of on the fly. Things that were more prioritized were tile work, floors, restoring all of the detail that was there that was left and able to be restored, like the plaster in the bedrooms and even the painted decorative trim work in the great room and all of that. I think things that were less priority were the kitchens. We put kitchens in there that were nice and usable, but we wanted to focus the funds on the bones of the house because honestly, even the kitchens could get renovated, down the line. And as far as like what was most rewarding, I'll let Adriane answer this too, but I mean, just the whole thing and how everyone says that they drive past the home, and myself included, we're both lifelong Louisvillians and have both, kind of lived driving past it our whole lives and seeing how much interest there's been in the home and how I think it's one of those cases where turning it into a rental is the best use for it because I think more people can enjoy it than if it stayed a personal home. So it's been really exciting. I don't know if Adriane has anything to add to that. It's just a really cool and the craziest, most unique project I'll probably ever work on. So I think he's got as well.
Oh, I was going to mention, did I say that he was 148?
Oh, I don't know. You mentioned that.
Oh, yeah. I was also going to mention something that's kind of neat from these blueprints is that James Gaffney was architect number 148 registered in Kentucky. And today there's over 100,000 architects registered across the United States. So he was really early. He was one of the first.
Do we know anything about the person that owned the home during the time that was abandoned? And why they let prime real estate fall on such a terrible.
Do you want to answer that? I think it's hard to say, I think it was maybe left to relatives, not, I think the prior owners took fantastic care of it and perhaps the owners were not as interested in the home or had other pursuits. I think that occupied their their time and resources, maybe, if that's a good answer. I think that, I mean, and that's all we know, you know, there's not a whole lot, like, we know, I'm not like withholding anything, but it is, you know, people have different priorities, I think.
In one of your slides, you mentioned the historic tax credit.
Mhm.
Kentucky recently upgraded its tax credit system to $180 a year.
Yep.
25 of those available to single family home. Which one did you use? Because it's an income producing property.
Yeah.
It could have taken commercial credit, or it could have taken residential credit.
Do you know?
I don't know the answer to
I'm not sure. I don't know if, good timing, our fearless leader left
Yeah.
out.
I'm not sure, and he did that early in the construction process, so it was before it became an Airbnb and everything, but it was for limited portions of the exterior of the building on this project. We have some projects where they pursue it for the whole building inside and out, and it was pretty limited on this one.
Thank you.
We got a fascinating question from the Zoom chat over here. Is Dr. Weiss involved in renovating the other properties in Louisville? What are
You know, he is not. I think that this was sort of a passion project for him and has occupied a good bit of his time. So no, I don't think so. Although he was a great person to work with for that type of thing. Like truly like ideal client, I would say. He was great. And we're really appreciative to him for having the vision and being willing to take on something like this.
This is correct, the TV too. Could you get a little bit of background about who you are, your department, your experience, were you in school?
Yeah. Thanks, Lauren. I'm from Louisville, as is Adriane, born and raised. I'll answer the question before you ask it. I went to Sacred Heart. Oh yeah, we both went to the Temple for preschool and both went to Sacred Heart for high school at different times. And I went to Auburn University in Alabama for college, and I graduated in 2020, which was a really awesome time to graduate. And I'm currently pursuing licensure halfway through I've done 3 of my 6 exams to become licensed. And yeah, I'm from Louisville. And then I worked at work for essentially since graduation for a little over 3 years. So, and then Adriane.
Yeah, I did my architecture school at University of Michigan and Washington University in St. Louis. And I've been licensed for a long time. I worked in Chicago and in Austin, Texas. And then I've been back in Louisville for about 3 years now. So, and this was an awesome first project to have.
Very cool.
All right, we have one last question. Anybody want?
Okay, thanks, Mom. Mhm. Oh, yeah. Is the house? It's about 4,000 square feet, so, and about equally, or a little more up top, a little less down on the lower level.
Houses on the station, is it the old thermal?
No,
Okay.
Yeah. That's the name of the company, yeah.
Thank you.
Well, thanks to all of you all for the really wonderful questions that are on the phone.